What a test, huh? Well,
apologize to everyone on the line. I've been trying to get in. We had some technical glitches, and I'll take the responsibility. I just currently, dyslexia is not good for punching in codes, but I've been trying. I've been yelling and screaming in the dark in the background. No one can hear me!
well, we apologize. I mean, obviously, there are glitches here and there with the system.
Want to make sure we're taking care of people who want to know.
Well, we appreciate it.
And Darren, just a technical thing, Darren, you're a little bit fainter than David, so I don't know what you can do. Just be sure you're talking as loud as you can in whatever kind of phone you have or headset, just so we can hear you as clearly as possible.
Okay.
So, David, I guess we're ready to get started. It's over to you.
Sure. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. And again, we apologize for this delay. We're starting really late, but it's a good thing we finally got Darren on, because this is the first time really that I've actually sent out an email blast, or Sherry has, and somebody replied saying, "God bless you for this email, for setting up this webinar." And I'm like, all the other times we've been sending out webinar notices, nobody ever said that to me. So apparently this is something that is near and dear to people's hearts. So we're really looking forward to this, folks. And again, thank you so much for your patience. This doesn't happen all the time like this, and we're trying to work the system out as much as we possibly can. I'm just going to quickly do an overview. Most of you already know why we're here, and it's all in line with our philosophy. When we started building wealth, building strength webinars, Sherry and I did, when we first started, the idea was to help people understand the basic principles, the fundamentals of health, and so that they in turn can take control. I know Bernie Siegel doesn't like me using that term, but at least have some sense of control rather than just flailing around in the world or in life and just letting whatever disease or problem happen to them. And we know that health is not just about your physical body, it's also about your mind, and it's also about your spirit, your beliefs, your faith, your love, your passions, and all those things. So we wanted to put together something that was intelligent enough for people from all backgrounds, whether medical professional or layperson, even illiterate, for people to be able to see and understand those basic principles, have an overall view, and also be able to see and understand the most important aspects. And I have in front of you on the screen today the three main things we always focus on. And today we're really talking about number 2 here, what our bodies need to function at their best. And I'm going to explain that in a little bit. Again, the title of today's webinar is The Healing Power of Humor. And of course, this picture that we show all the time, the mind and the emotions, the things that go on inside you, hold the preeminent position when it comes to health. If we don't get that right, everything else, whether the nervous system, the endocrine system, or the immune system, will not work like they should. Study after study has proven that our emotional status really affects everything from the way we absorb nutrition to the way our immune system fights against disease. Well, not too much about that, because like we know, we've already gone way past it. But here we have, and I'm going to read his bio in a minute from now, but I wanted everybody to see this picture. This is the cover of our guest's book. It's called Laugh and Get Rich. And there you have Darren LaCroix to the right, along with his co-author, Rick Siegel. And the whole idea is profiting from humor in any business. And I think that is just a great philosophy and great term. And we're going to show you a lot more things about how humor really profits. It's not just business and health and life, but health and, well, not just business and health, but life as a whole. And I'm going to, that's the man himself standing right there, about 6'2" tall. It looks that way from the slide, though.
Not exactly.
All right, folks, I'm going to read his bio out. In 2001, Darren LaCroix, the world champion of public speaking, outspoke 25,000 contestants from 14 countries to win that title. Wow. Since that victory, Darren has traveled the world demystifying the process of creating a powerful speech. He has roused audiences in faraway places like Oman, Malaysia, Taiwan with his inspirational journey from first-rate chump to first-class champ, proving anything is possible if you are willing to work for it. Desire to learn and the willingness to fail if necessary to achieve his dream. The self-proclaimed student of comedy is living proof that humor is a skill that can be learned. I'm going to skip a few things further down. His successful book, Laugh and Get Rich, what we saw, How to Profit from Humor in Any Business, contains interviews with corporate executives who share his philosophy. Now translated into 3 languages, it is a mainstay on business bookshelves. He is the co-founder of the Humor Institute and co-creator of the Humor Bootcamp. He directs seminars that help presenters wisely use the power of humor to lighten up their presentations. He's an award-winning producer. His film, Living and Laughing with Cancer, A Comedian's Journey, was honored at the World Fest Houston Film Festival for its groundbreaking insights into humor and healing. The inspirational documentary about his best friend's battle with cancer brings humor and hope, to those touched by life-threatening conditions. This is a movie I would love to see because cancer is near and dear to my heart. Darren's unique brand of humor is featured in numerous corporate training videos. His extensive list of clients include Fidelity Investments, Sheraton Hotels, IBM, and the list goes on and on and on. Darren LaCroix, you are welcome to the Call Stroke webinar.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm not sure what you did to that picture, but I'm not really that stocky. Far from 6'2". 5'8", I guess, platform. But thank you. It's a delight to be here. It's my favorite subject, and I was, as you mentioned, in high school, I was really considered least likely to ever be funny or ever make anyone laugh. In fact, when I first started in stand-up, my junior high principal was in the audience, and he was just absolutely shocked. He's like, Darren? On a comedy stage? And I still get that to this day, but, you know, it's because of who I was growing up. I really didn't have the confidence or self-esteem to ever try and make anyone laugh, and I never just had the funny bone, quote unquote. But I discovered you don't have to. And I went to people who were the greatest coaches back in Boston, where I'm originally from, and took every class I could, read every book I could, and really just kind of pursued something they told me was impossible. But I loved seeing people laugh, and I didn't care what it took. Because of my passion for watching people laugh, I was like, I want to figure out how to invoke that. That's what I want.
But here's the thing. I mean, like you, I wasn't born with a funny bone either, and I've always envied, so to speak, people who are funny and who can be the life of a party, so to speak. And that's one of the reasons why I've got Sherry on these calls with me, because she injects the fun into it. I'm just as dull as they come. But why you? Why would someone who is not born with a funny bone suddenly decide to say, I want to be funny, I want to be able to entertain people? I mean, and then do it, get it done. Because most people think, well, if you're born with a certain personality, just live with it. There's not much you can do to change it. And I certainly was told that I can't be funny, even though I wanted to be funny. I was told that my jokes is bomb. So, yeah, go ahead.
A lot of people have that belief, and it's a false belief that you're born with it or you're not. You're born as a funny person or you're not. Right. And quite honestly, I believe that too. But it was really, part of my main message is humor is a release of tension, and the tension comes first. And it was back in the beginning, I want to say it was 1992, and I had gone to 4 years of business school. I went out to the American Dream, and I bought a Subway sandwich shop. And I was going for the franchise. I was going to own 12 of them was my goal. And after about 6 months of having the first one opened, I could not pay my bills. In fact, they opened another Subway just down the road, took all my profits right off the top, and I had to go get a day job in order to pay my employees. If that makes any sense.
No, it doesn't.
I was being vandalized. I had 7 tires slashed. I was working. If I wasn't at my day job working to pay the employees, I was at the shop until 1 in the morning. And then I would be there to open it the next day. and then go and work a schedule in a very flexible schedule at my day job. And I was really at wit's end. If you saw pictures of me there, you would see this young man with no hope and no dream, and his eyes just sunk into his head from pure fatigue. And one of my buddies gave me this motivational tape of Brian Tracy, great speaker, many of us know.
Right.
And I'm driving home listening to this tape, and on the tape he asked a question. He said, what would you dare to dream if you knew you wouldn't fail? And I thought about that. I'm like, what would I dare to dream if I knew I wouldn't fail? But if I wouldn't fail, I'd be a comedian. How cool would that be? Make people laugh and earning a living at that? That would be the ultimate.
Right.
But then all of a sudden that little voice of doubt jumped in my head. But that's not you, Darren. You're not a funny person. But that wasn't the question. The question was, what would you dare to dream if you knew you couldn't fail? So at this time, I'm listening to all these motivational tapes. I'm like, now I have to try it. So let me ask you a question, Dr. David. If you wanted to become a comedian, who would you go to for advice?
Some of the best comedians in the world.
You go to a comedian, absolutely. So guess what I did?
You went to a comedian.
Family.
You what?
How stupid is that? If you have any hope, any dream, any desire, don't go to your family for inspiration.
That's right.
Go to someone who's doing it. They think about it differently. So luckily I didn't listen to them, and I did go and ask a comedian for advice. I went to a little comedy show on Friday night, went up to the comedian after the show. He seemed approachable, and I said, hi, my name is Darren. I want to try this. What do I need to do? And he asked me a question. He said, are you funny? And I said, no. He said, great. Great?
What?
Immediately he changed my thinking right there. What do you mean great?
Uh-huh.
And he said, you don't have to be funny at the beginning. You have to be funny at the end. So whatever you want to do, if you want to build your business, you have to be great at it to start. So, that kind of grabbed my attention. He said, well, here's what you need to do. You need to go get this book. First thing you want to learn anything, you got to go get the information. Where's the information? And he recommended this book by Judy Carter called Stand-Up Comedy, The Book. If anyone gives presentations, I highly recommend that. And then the other thing he said to do is go to an open mic night. Watch an amateur night. Watch someone else who's just starting out. Compare yourself to them, not somebody who's, been around for a while. So on Sunday, I went to Stitches in Boston, Massachusetts. And I watched people go up for their first time, and they were horrible. And it inspired me. I looked at them. I'm like, oh, my gosh, I can do that. And because of that inspiration, I studied for 2 months. It was April 26, 1992, Stitches, Boston, Mass. You ever have a moment in your life where it turns into slow motion?
Oh, yeah.
This was that moment for me. And I always remember the comedian introducing me, still a great friend of mine, actually a headliner here in Vegas. And he said, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage for the first time, Darren LaCroix. And I went up on stage, and it was horrible. It was brutal. And in the midst of the misery, I had one little slip of the tongue, a little verbal accident, so to speak, and I realized what I said and how I said it, and I just said, shoot, I did that wrong. And everybody laughed. And I'm like, what's going on? That wasn't supposed to be a joke, but I'll take it. And I got a laugh, and it was a mistake. And I walked off stage, and this man put his arm around my shoulder, and he said, don't worry, man, it's just your first time. And I remember thinking, don't worry, it's just my first time. Did you see what I did? I got a laugh. That's, no one told me I could do this. So in that 5 minutes of time that I had one thing that worked. Even though it was an accident, I figured if I can figure out how to reproduce that, get rid of everything else that didn't work, I could do this. And I've been doing stand-up comedy ever since that night. I went and I took every class I could, read every book that I could. But here's the thing that I'll say, whether it's building your business or whether it's, humor and healing or humor and hope, what's the one thing you could be doing? that's probably the most unfun thing you can do, but the most productive that you don't want to do. And in the comedy world, especially when you're getting started, my comedy mentors said, Darren, the most important thing you can do every single day is stage time. Stage time, stage time, stage time. Doesn't matter about writing. It doesn't matter if you have naturally funny or anything. None of that matters. All that matters is, did you get up on stage today or not? And I used to, get on stage 6 or 7 nights a week, hang out wherever I could just for a chance. And if I couldn't get stage time in Boston, I used to drive 2.5 hours to Portland, Maine, to go on stage for 5 minutes for free and drive back and go to my day job the next morning.
Oh, you're kidding.
And, yeah, my high school buddies, they looked at me and they thought I was stupid. And now I get to do what I love to do for a living. I fly all over the world. Spoke in China last month. Spoke in Malaysia, Taiwan, the Middle East. Now those same friends look at me and they say I'm lucky. So apparently you can go from stupid to lucky.
But the key thing there seems to be practice.
I couldn't do it. I did it. And again, my message to everyone tonight is not necessarily to be a comedian. I don't want you to be a comedian. But I want to, give people some principles that they can understand how it works. Because humor is such a powerful tool, and you don't have to be a comedian, funny person to use it. But you have to understand how it works, and that's what I wanted to get into tonight. Because I watched one of my best friends in the world die of cancer. But his attitude was absolutely amazing. And he was very funny about it all along the way, which not only helped him, but even a bigger picture, helped all of his friends and family around him watching him go through this. I just firmly believe in, I went and I interviewed CEOs for 4 years who use humor as part of their business plan and created the book Laugh and Get Rich from that. But when I say rich, I don't want it to sound like it's all money, because there's rich in spirit too.
Right.
So it's just as important there. And then I created a documentary, which I changed the title since, it won the award, but I've changed the title to Healing, Hope, and Humor, the story of my best friend, and just a powerful thing for people who are in that situation. Anyway, he had an incredible story. Super guy, very funny.
Well, we would like to hear some of that, but first of all, can these books this book and this and the DVD be gotten from your website?
I'm sorry?
Can the book and the DVD be gotten from your website? Can they?
Yeah, if anyone wants to have a free newsletter, or you can see, I have video clips on YouTube/Stage Time, because that's the thing that I teach, Stage Time. So there's free video clips there, and my website is humor411.com. Just humor information. So humor411.com.
Humor411.com.
Yep.
Okay. All right, great. Now, Darren, before we go on, I really want to ask you this. Where does humor come from?
Great question. It took me a while to understand this as I studied humor. And I'm sure, David, you've seen in the theater world, I'm sure everyone listening has seen in the theater world, that you see the comedy and tragedy masks.
Right.
And no one's ever seen the comedy without the tragedy. The tragedy comes first. That's where the stressor is. And that's what life deals us. Life deals us those stressors and those tragedies and those pet peeves and those frustrations. Humor is the release of that tension. So you have to have the tension first in order to relieve it. So again, that's why I'm not talking stand-up comedy here. Yes, that's my background, but I'm talking about strategic, tension-relieving humor that releases the tension of the people around you based on what they're frustrated about. I just did a program, a big speech in Washington, D.C. for the American Payroll Association. So when I go in to do my work, I walk around and I'm talking to people and I ask them, So what frustrates you? What drives you crazy in this industry? And, people like in the network marketing world, it's trying to recruit people is a frustration. And then once you get people in, it's trying to get them to actually apply the program in the process.
Right.
Everyone has their frustrations. But I wanted to key in on what was the frustration of the group and the audience I was in front of. And writing that humor allows me to connect with them. It's just frustration is a common emotion that we can all get together on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it really stems from the tragedy. If you'll notice too, sometimes you'll be at a wedding or a funeral, and you'll find yourself laughing, and it turns into crying, and then goes back into laughing again. It's because they're both a release of tension, and they're actually, laughing and crying is closely related. It's God's little tension relief, if I can say that, that is truly a gift to all of us. That's why I think when people are stressed or when they're trying to heal, it's because they're in a more difficult place and their immune system isn't working. Well, part of the reason the immune system isn't working is because of the stress. It's not allowed to because it's got to deal with the stress. If you don't have the stress there, it functions more purely.
Absolutely.
So it really stems from tragedy, if we can put it in that realm.
As you were speaking, there's a slide up talking about how humor actually enhances the immune system. But the question that might come up is, well, do I have to have tragedy to experience humor? How do you speak to that?
Well, do you have to have tragedy? No, but it's in the common tragedy that we share the bigger laughs with. And like my friend Dave, let me give you an example from the video and from his story.
Okay.
He said, when he was first diagnosed, the doctor said, Dave, you have cancer and we're going to have to take out your bladder. He said, but through the miracles of modern medicine, there's several options. So what kind of bladder would you like? And David looked him right in the eyes and he said, bigger. Bigger. He said, I want to watch the whole Godfather trilogy. I won't have to get up and go to the bathroom. Now, is that a tragedy? Is that stress? Absolutely.
Right.
It's a release of that stress. I mean, there's stress all around us. Even the happiest people still have things that frustrate them. If you think about what do Letterman, Leno, and Carson talk about in their opening monologues, they don't talk about the things that are going good. They talk about the things that are driving us crazy. So there's always jokes on gas prices right now. Why?
Right.
That's our stressor.
Right.
So does it have to be? No. But if you get away from the releasing of tension, now you can drift off into the, say, the more negative, cynical side of comedy, which, I don't really approve of. So you're going down a different road. Now you're dealing with stereotypes rather than the pure release of tension. And I love the release of tension. I think it's why we have the gift of laughter, I think. But everyone, humor is subjective, too. Humor is in the mind of the beholder.
Mm-hmm.
That we all have our favorites, the people who make us laugh. We all have the people who are, God look, Billy Crystal is a very, very successful comedian. He doesn't crack me up at all. However, I watch him in the movie City Slickers, he kills me. But his stand-up just doesn't work for my sense of humor. It doesn't make him funny or not funny. It's just a different sense of humor. But see, that's why when we go to the commonalities of stressors, that's when we're all in the same boat, when we all have that comedy. I mean, that tragedy.
Right. And when you talk about
your question, but
what you did, sure. And when you talk about people being different, it's like different cultures in the world. I mean, the British humor is very different from American humor, and Nigerian humor definitely is very, very different where I'm from the Western world. But I think you're right about the stressors. I mean, everybody experiences stress in some way or the other, and if you can tap into that and twist it and make it seem funny, that's really
Let me just throw you another couple quick examples, because I think it's examples where people really listen to, where people might hear us talking and say, well, yeah, well, that makes sense, but give me something to put my meat hooks in. Let me understand it better. So I always think examples are the best way.
Right. Go ahead.
So one of my friends, when I was struggling as a comedian / turning into a speaker, I used to sell women's shoes. One of my coworkers was this woman who was very funny, naturally funny. And she had heard what I was doing and working on this DVD, and she goes, "Oh, Darren," her name is Barbara, and she tells me with permission, she says, you have to tell my story when you're on stage. And I said, well, what happened? She said, well, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she said, the doctor told me that they were going to have to radiate one of my breasts. And the doctor said it will, but there's side effects when we do this. It will make it firmer and larger. She looked the doctor square in the eye and she said, you do them both. And it doesn't mean, when my friend Dave makes fun of his bladder and a bigger bladder, and when Barbara makes fun of, her larger, firmer breasts, that's looking at the human side. It's not making fun of the disease. And David was, he was just so phenomenal in his wisdom as well. He used to tell me that when they would have these cancer support groups, that if it was just the patients, they would laugh and laugh and laugh, bending over backwards and sideways every which way you can over the most disgusting things you ever saw, because they were all in that same situation, so to speak. But he said, but Darren, if there would be one other person, one family member who was not a patient, who came into the support group, it took away the fun, because they became, this outside influence that was not comfortable with the laughter. So in that uncomfort, it kind of diminishes it all, the whole effect for everyone. So my friend David and Barbara, they were just as scared as everyone. It's not like they were laughing it off. It's they used humor as a coping mechanism in order to deal with it. My buddy Dave still cried, still was scared. But using the humor to cope, it allowed him to not get so caught up with it that he couldn't ask the important questions to the doctor that he needed to. So it's just a powerful tool. And one more quick one. A couple of summers ago, my mom had to get rushed to the hospital, and she had this massive pain in her chest. And my mom thought it was a heart attack. She was absolutely 100% convinced she was having a heart attack. And when I got there, I talked to the EMT, and they said that she was making her bed when it happened. The EMT said, Darren, it can't be a heart attack because the pain is on her right side. It's not in the left side where the heart is. But my mom, that's all she could think of, So I'm looking down there and looking at her, and I'm just thinking, how can I relieve her tension? See, that's the magic question. When you see people who are stressed out, I say, when you see people who are stressed, paint on their forehead 3 red letters, RMT, relieve my tension. When you see someone stressed, that doesn't mean that you should one-up them and get pissed at them. That's not going to help anybody and probably backfire on you in the long run. But if we can see people who are stressed and choose to find a way to relieve their tension, it is the best customer service, the best love for fellow mankind that you could ever have. And so I'm looking down at my mom thinking, RMT, how can I relieve her tension? Relieve my tension. So I'm looking down and I'm wondering, how can I explain this to her? She's wrong, but she's so caught up in it, she won't let go. So I'm looking down and I said, Mom, the pain is in the right side. It's not in the left side where your heart is. And I said, oh, that's right, I forgot. You're my mom. And your heart is so big, it probably could stretch from the left to the right.
Okay.
Huge smile came across her face. I got to her. I gave her a little bit of relief, and I got her attention.
Oh, that was great.
It's that type of thing, but it stems from that question. Whether it's in business, whether it's in health, whether it's in healing, whether it's in dealing with your neighbors, how can you relieve their tension?
Right. And it seems like when you begin to relieve people's tension, then they're able to develop the clarity to actually deal with the problem at hand, as opposed to just running helter-skelter and not just like with a chicken with its head cut off. It seems like that tension just totally makes you incapable of actually performing properly. So if humor is there, it helps to take away that edge, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It's just there's so many powers to humor thing. But
now,
again, people wouldn't be on this call if they didn't know that or weren't interested.
Right. Now, I'm going to mention Norman Cousins, and I'm going to read out a question that someone asked. Now, folks, remember you can always type in a question as we're speaking, and then whenever I get a good time to, I'll go ahead and ask it. But you are familiar with Norman Cousins, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I think that was probably one of the best stories ever with regards to healing and an incurable humor and an incurable condition. I mean, this person was told by the doctors that he was going to die within a year. He had this, I think it was an autoimmune disease that was just eating away at his body. He was in severe pain. They were loading him with steroids. And he just decided that he was going to, take control and begin to study and find out what it takes to heal. But here's how he went about it, which was really fascinating. He went in the reverse. He looked at it. He said, he knows that people with chronic emotional problems always complain about they have ulcers, for instance, or they have eating problems. And he knew that people with emotional problems would have stomach troubles. And he thought about a few other things that actually, in the negative, can cause the body to go wrong. So he began to think that, is it possible, if it's possible for the negative to do this, negative emotions to do this, how about positive emotions? And that's how he began to study, and eventually he checked himself out of the hospital, did his own thing, got his own videos, and began to watch funny videos, the old reel-to-reel clips, and began, I think it was the Three Stooges, a few Red Skelton, just a bunch of the old movies, and he just basically, along with his own, he took a lot of nutritional supplementation like vitamin C, but the key was that when he laughed, a good, I think it was 10 minutes of a belly laugh, it was given the equivalent of about 2 hours of pain-free sleep, for instance. And he would do that, and eventually he lived to 25 years longer than the doctors had said he would. So I can relate to what you're saying. I haven't had any major health challenges, but I think it's just so important to help people laugh and enjoy themselves. But someone asks a question here, and she says, is there an anatomy of a joke? So this one's being technical here. Are there steps you go through when you are putting together a humorous presentation? That seems like step one is to find the area of tension. Then what?
Yes, I highly, anyone who gives presentations, I have a 4-CD set called Learn How the Pros Make 'em Laugh, where I sat down with comedy mentors. And you can find that on humor411.com. But I don't want to sound like I'm just here to sell my process.
No,
but,
of course not.
I put my heart and soul into creating these. But, great book, like I said, I get nothing for, but it's called Stand-Up Comedy, The Book by Judy Carter. And that was the first book that was ever recommended to me that night by the comedian there, Chris McGuire. And I went out and got the book, and what it did is it opened up this whole other part of my brain that made me realize that comedians aren't up there just winging it. They sit down and work on things for hours and hours and hours to make it look like they're winging it. But this book would give you, one of the things she talks about is you write from your own frustrations. So what are the things that drive you crazy? What are the things that upset you or frustrate you? Those things that frustrate you are probably things that frustrate other people. So when you're writing for that, you're writing for others, but you're using your own internal drive to make it happen. But there is structure to jokes, and and I'd love to spend all day with you. I teach a 2-day boot camp on this, and there's 3 levels of the boot camp, so it's like 6 days. There's so much to teach, but there's so learn. But if you can start to understand that there is a structure to a speech, to humor, that there's a way that you can say almost the exact same thing, and one way it will work and one way it won't. For example, David, you're familiar with Toastmasters, correct?
I am, correct.
By the way, anyone who is a presenter, I highly recommend Toastmasters as a great place to make mistakes. You know, that's how I came into the corporate world, as my mentor said, stage time, stage time, stage time. So I went over and found this thing called Toastmasters. And I thought, wow, here's a place I could get stage time during the day, because comedy clubs are only open at night. I can fail twice a day. And that was really my philosophy, and that's why I got to do what I get to do for a living. But here I am. I had only done comedy clubs. I had no idea what a Toastmasters club was about. I walk in. There's maybe 12 people there. Now, again, keep in mind, I came from the comedy world, so I noticed something different right away. These people are warm, encouraging, and sober.
Okay.
So
Okay.
That is a joke that I use all the time, and it's based on the principle of three, that the first two are logical. You know, it's a list. You hear speakers always list three things. There's the rule of three. But in comedy, we take the third thing, the third item on the list, and we exaggerate it. So the first two create the expectation, which is a setup of a joke. And the third one is the change of direction with that exaggeration. So the first two, if you say warm, encouraging, the audience is thinking kind, loving, some other third logical one.
Right.
Instead, we change direction completely. We go to the exaggeration, and we go for sober. So it's 1, 2, 3, bang. That's where the switch is. So that's just one little example. Again, you know, you're talking a 2 or 3 day boot camp here, but get the book by Judy Carter. Get my Learn How the Pros Make Them Laugh. But you will see that there are strategic ways to create humor, these exercises that comedians use to flush out, so to speak, the humor in a situation or a setting. And then the other thing I really recommend that everyone who presents, number one thing you should do, whether you want humor or not, number one thing, doesn't cost you anything. Open a Word document on your desktop. It's crucial that it's on your desktop. And I want you to name it Story File. So storyfile.doc.
Story file.
Story file. And in that story file, that is where I want you, from now on, I want you to collect stories. Now, I'm not saying go steal someone else's. Don't you ever do that. That's wrong. It's lack of integrity, and it will not teach you about you. What I mean by collect stories is collect your own stories. Those funny little things that happen, those things that crack you up, the funny things your kids or grandchildren say. It's so much easier to create humor from your own life and your own experience, and it makes the presentation easier to tell because it's yours. You're not trying to memorize something else. You were there. You lived it. Okay, so we need to tweak the story to make it a little funnier, but bottom line is, here's the situation. And Charlie Chaplin said, for humor or comedy, all you need is a pretty girl, a park bench, and a policeman. And, you know, that's the basis of a good story is you have a goal, a setting, and an obstacle to that goal. You know, that's everyone's story. It's universal. But that's the elements or the atoms of comedy, if you will. But bottom line is, if you can start collecting stories, start seeing more humor around you, that is the key to just, if we can just, from this call, if we can do nothing else but create more awareness and get you to look. You know, Doc, I don't know if you know this or not, but do you know what an active reticulator is?
No.
Okay.
Active reticulator.
An active reticulator is a part of the brain where it gets you to look for things.
Oh, okay. The
Let's say you're going, you want to buy a silver Mercedes convertible. So you decide that that's the car I want. So you drive down the road and you see silver convertible Mercedes everywhere. Or you want to buy a house. You drive down the road, the same road you've been driving down, and all of a sudden you see for sale by owner signs like you've never seen them before. It's that part of the brain. So do nothing else from this call but just get you to look for more humor. Seek and ye shall find. And then collect those stories. Put them in your story file. And then I create my speeches by looking at the story file. It's so much easier to tell a story. And obviously the funniest story, we need to make points with them, but there's so many points that we can find in many different stories. Everywhere I go, I tell a story of my first time on stage. But when I'm doing comedy, I'm doing it for the humor. When I'm doing motivation, I'm doing it for the motivation. Same story. Different points, different slant. When I do it for teaching about getting paid, I take another slant on that. So collect stories is the best thing I could tell you. And be aware of them. Start looking more. You will find them. Trust me. Doctor.
Just being more aware.
Absolutely. You know, when I started interviewing CEOs for the book, all of a sudden I started seeing more and more companies started coming out of the woodwork that used humor strategically. They were always there, but I wasn't looking for them, so they weren't present in mind, and I didn't notice them. But like I stumbled across one company, a printing company called Color for Real Estate, and the CEO, literally, no exaggeration, his name is Jim Laffey, Laffey. And very funny, man. He took his company from $0 to $6 million in 6 years.
Oh,
and
wow.
he said, humor is the most underrated, undervalued service you can provide, and it costs you nothing. I love that quote. A gentleman named Dan Wolf, who ran the largest non-affiliated airline called Cape Airlines. They had a company philosophy of Mocha Hagati, which is make our customers happy, have a good time doing it. I had never heard of Cape Airlines, but when I started looking, all of a sudden I started seeing more of it.
But that sounds like what Southwest would. That sounds like a motto Southwest would have had themselves too, huh?
Absolutely, they were a chapter in my book too.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. But everyone's heard of them. I figured nobody heard of Mocha Hagati or Cape Cod Airlines before.
Right. Okay, but that's one aspect. But come on, you spent hours searching, looking. You studied. Of course, you had stage time too. So it isn't enough. Obviously, that's the foundation, being more aware and being on the lookout. But you wouldn't be where you were if all you did was just be more aware, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, but like I said, I went to the best comedians. I learned from them. I took their classes. I read the books. I did the exercises. It's one thing to read a book. It's another thing to actually do the exercises.
Right. Well, true. Two different things entirely. Well, what about what are your favorite comedies?
What are my favorite comedies? Comedians?
Yeah, comedians. Yeah, comedians. That's what I meant to say. Yeah, comedians.
Well,
who are?
no, first I'll tell you the most popular ones that people would know of. Number one is Robin Williams. He's somebody that I studied early on. I loved his playfulness. So you will see, even in my World Championship speech that I did for Toastmasters out of 25,000 contestants, I stood out because I actually did a belly flop right on the stage as part of the speech. Well, that comes from the people that I learned from. And Robin Williams is somebody I studied over and over again. Right now, popular comedian Ron White, who I just watched his DVD this afternoon while I was working here in my office. Ron White, you can't fix stupid. But that's he's a little edgy, but I like that. But really the two favorite that you probably never ever heard of is one was Dave Fitzgerald. I mean, these are guys who became my best friends in the world. I watched them, I studied them. they were on, Dave was on A&E's Comedy on the Road, Evening at the Improv, but he was never a national act. And actually, I have a picture up here in my office. And because of bringing him into the motivational world, I read a quote that he wrote right on his picture for me. He said, Darren, here I am, an opener act at best. But bringing him into the motivational world and helping him deal with, the life-threatening illness he was going through, he said, Darren, you have affected my life in a way that cannot be measured. The direction I'm now going in is because of you. I mean, I pretty much cry when I read that. But anyway, he's a phenomenal guy. And the other one is my still mentor, Vinny Favorito. If you ever get to Vegas, you have to go to his show. He has been struggling for years here, and just last week got his own show on the Strip in the Flamingo, which is like a comedian's dream. And here's a guy who will 10 minutes of material, and then he will, the whole rest of the show, whole hour after that, will talk to the audience. Every single night, different show, new crowd, all about them. And he's just amazing. But I have learned so much from him. But I continue to study. Here I am, the world champion of public speaking. I have a book, have a DVD. I am so far from done in my learning process. But that's what keeps me excited and fresh and lets me appreciate what I have and what I get to do. So you'll find me once a week, if I'm not traveling, sitting there watching one of my mentors. And whenever I play around here as well, he comes to see me to to improve me, so to speak. Give me brutal, honest feedback, which is what we all need.
Mentors, study. And do you have any stories of people who used humor? I know you mentioned Dave Fitzgerald. Any other stories of people who, with humor, they were able to better go through their illness or their health challenge?
Yeah. Actually, a gentleman that I'm a mentor to, his name is Nick Prefontaine. And you can go to nickprefontaine.com. Nick is an amazing kid. He made a bad decision when he was in high school, and he went snowboarding on an icy day, didn't wear a helmet, and went over a jump and landed on his head and was in a coma for 3 weeks.
Oh my.
And just, it's just a split-second kid decision that we've all made. Fortunately for him, it changed his life. Yeah, here's a kid who, when he finally did wake up from the coma, he had to literally teach himself to swallow again.
Oh, wow.
Swallow. I mean, never mind walk and talk. I mean, things that you and I take for granted every single day.
Right.
He had to start over. There's even some video footage on his website. You'll see him all hooked up to tubes and things. And now he goes around and what I'm mentoring him on. But, here's a kid that his grandfather brought in a fart machine into the hospital.
A fart machine?
Fart machine, which had a remote control button that you could put the machine somewhere and press this button, and it would make a farting sound.
Oh, man.
Now that sounds juvenile, but here's a kid learn to walk and talk again. He tells a story of how this fart machine helped him through it because it cracked him up. And he was even telling stories that he would, put it on his own wheelchair when his grandmother was pushing him down the hallway, and he'd just press it right there, and everyone would think it's his grandmother.
He must have driven the nurses crazy.
Those little laughs that each day means so much. And, without that, it's just you don't have hope. If you don't have hope, you're not going to try. I remember one gentleman who I knew was a nurse's assistant, and he told me just a powerful thing that always stuck with me. He said, Darren, he said, it's my job to roll people down the hallway to the operating room. And he said, the people who are laughing, finding joy, when I push them down the hall into the room, are the ones who recover. They're the ones who have doom and gloom. They're the ones that don't make it. And here's a guy, he's not a doctor, he's not anything, but he's the observer. And wow, that just That just hit me right between the eyes. And Dave Fitzgerald, when he was going through his chemo, I can't explain it, but I know the feeling of it, where he would say, Darren, the side effect on this bottle of this I have to take says, patient may feel a tremendous sense of doom. He said, yeah, give me some more of that doom stuff. I need that. But he said that when he was on stage, making other people laugh, he said, was the only time he felt no pain. And for about 10 minutes after. And he said it would all come back to him. So all he ever wanted to do was be on stage, because that's when he felt no pain. And it wasn't him laughing. It was making other people laugh. There's such a value to that for all of us. I live for that. I love that. And I was willing to make mistakes and willing to go up on stage, even if I was scared to death, because I wanted that. I wanted that feeling. Picture this little kid in high school has a fear of public speaking, a fear of the stage, and says he wants to be a comedian. What would you say to him? My family, God bless them, they wanted me to save face. But now I love the fact that after I speak at a conference, I walk down the hallway 3 hours later, and I'll pass by someone who will just have a glum look on their face. They'll see me, and they'll smile and keep walking. Oh, my word. Does that make me feel like $1 million? That somebody looks at me and they call back what I did in my performance. Now, my performances aren't always great. Sometimes they're not even good. But sometimes they are. Sometimes they are great. But I love what I get to do, and I feel very fortunate. If I was to die tomorrow, it would be okay. I have no regrets. And I want more people to be able to feel that joy of just that little story of making my mom smile. She didn't even laugh, but making her smile in that tough situation, that is gold. That is the rich in Laugh and Get Rich.
I tell you, very few people can actually say what you've just said, that if you died tomorrow or today, you go feeling happy that you've used your time here. You spend your time here well and been a blessing to people. That is just fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Someone here is asking a question. I'm going to let you go very soon, but someone asked a question about what would be one of your most embarrassing moments on stage, or the funniest moment. I'm sure you have very few of those.
Oh, gosh, no. I mean, I had to have more embarrassing ones to get me to the good ones. At the beginning, you're in the back of a Chinese restaurant with 6 people in the room, 3 of them drunk and 3 of them making out, which is a visual. So we don't want to go up in those settings because you're dealing with a TV in the background and not everyone's paying attention and blah, blah, blah. But one that stands out as probably the most painful, actually mentioned it in my championship speech about how painful it was, that I was speaking for a group, actually at Cape Cod at the Chatham Bars Inn, which is a phenomenal hotel, even though I have bad vibes about it because of this situation. But I was to speak to a group of credit union board of directors, and they were an older group, and nothing wrong with that, but it was getting late, and when I arrived at the hotel, they said that they brought me to the meeting room to show me where it was, and there held about 200 people in that meeting room, and which didn't make sense to me because I know there was 400 people at the conference. And they said, well, don't worry, we have the other 200 people in another room down the hallway, and we're piping the sound in. They'll hear you. What? I'm presenting to people who aren't even in the room. And, everyone has their own style. I'm a very visual person. I use a lot of facial expression, a lot of facial animation. So without seeing my face, you miss half of my act. You miss half of my humor because it's my emotional reactions that really are what works. Well, bottom line is I was very new in the business. I was even newer to corporate than stand-up, and I just was about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I was supposed to go on stage at 8, and they hadn't brought me up yet. Well, people are getting up and leaving in droves. They're elderly, a lot of them. So it's time for Wapner. You know, Judge Judy's on. We got to go. They didn't care that a comedian was coming up. So here I am. I'm trying to be positive. How do I turn lemons into lemonade, lemons into lemonade? How do I do that? And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, well, half the people are gone already. They're about to bring me up. Let me run down to the other room and see if I can get those people to come and sit in this room. So at least they'll be able to see me. So I run down the other room, and I'm down in the other room, and all of a sudden I hear faintly in the background, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dan LaCroix." I'm not even in the room, and they're introducing me. So I turned to dash back to the other room, and I knocked over an oxygen tank.
Uh-oh.
That was connected to a guy.
Oh, no.
I almost killed someone on the way to the stage.
Oh, no.
I got up there, and it was horrible. None of my jokes were working, and the ones that did, it would be like one table laughs. Well, I got to the very end of the presentation. All I want to do is crawl out of there. And I go for my last bit, my surefire bit, that always gets a response. So I bring up this woman from the audience, and it's an old improv game. And I tell the story verbally, and she stands behind me and tells the story with her hand gestures. So as she's telling the story with her hand gestures, I'm saying it verbally. Well, it usually works best the more animated the woman is.
Uh-huh.
Well, this woman stood there like an ancient statue. She didn't move. So I turned back and I said, "Please, would you do something with your hands?" And she reaches over and covers my mouth, meaning, shut up. And everyone in the place laughed. She got the one laugh of the night, and I was done. I was so done. So immediately I got out of there as quick as I could. I was feeling the pain. I was figuratively bleeding all over the stage, and I ran out and I called my mentor, Rick Siegel, my co-author of Laugh and Get Rich. And I called him up and I said, "Rick, I bombed. I died. They hated me. I quit." And Rick said, "So?" I didn't know how to argue with "so." I'm like, "What are you talking about, so?" He said, "Darren, I've been doing this for 10 years. I bomb once in a while, too. It's just part of the business." And he brought me back in when I was really done and I was washed up, and I was never going to do that again. But thanks to him, I kept going. And that's, I think, part of the power of mentors.
Right.
And, you know, that keeping going when ready to quit. But that was a true story, and if you saw it, it was even more painful than I just described it.
Oh, I can't even begin to imagine. Oh, wow. I don't suppose they invited you too many times back there again.
Never again. But here, last week I was in Washington, D.C., and, you know, the client raved about me and already was getting requests for the routine that I did because I wrote a routine just about them.
Uh-huh.
You know, the bottom line is you're always going to have the ones that work, and you're always going to have the ones that don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never going to be perfect. My bombs now are not nearly as bad as they used to be because I just have more stage time, have more experience. But it took me the bad times on stage to get to the good ones. As Vinny, my comedy mentor here in Las Vegas, says, "Darren, you learn more from the bad ones than you'll ever learn from the good ones. The good ones are more fun, but you'll learn more. And if you're truly in this for the long haul, if you truly care about your audience, you'll be more into the learning than the joy."
Wow. This has been great. Thank you so much, Darren.
I feel like I got to make up for the first 15 minutes I lost. I feel so bad. Oh, man.
I think you have. I really think you have. But we're not going to let you go on to you. Tell us your favorite joke line, your quote.
My favorite joke line?
Yeah.
Favorite quote?
Your favorite joke. Yeah, let's put it that way.
Oh. Well, I'll tell you my favorite quote.
Okay.
Which is by Steve Allen. And Steve Allen said, "Comedy equals tragedy plus time." comedy equals tragedy plus time. And it's just a profound thing. It sounds so simple. But, you know, we say someday we'll laugh about this. Or here's the key. Laugh sooner. Now, I'm not really a joke teller, but I'll tell you this, you know, part of my philosophy. Humor is in the mind of the beholder, and people around us need to laugh, but some people don't see the humor in things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we all have one. Everyone has one in their family or their extended family. Somebody that I like to refer to as the fun sucker. Somebody that sucks the fun out of everything. It is a law of Congress. You must have one in your family or in your extended family. And these are people who just don't see it. Oscar Wilde had a great quote. He said, some people bring happiness wherever they go, some whenever they go. And, you know, and I know right now everyone online or listening to this recording is thinking of exactly who it is in their family right now.
I know of someone myself.
So if you're sitting there right now and you have no idea who it is in your family, look in the mirror. Beware of the fun suckers. God help you if you have them in your business, and even worse if you're married to one. But
oh, yeah.
But for the rest of us, we need to find more fun and have more fun. Humor is around us. You know, we have the days where we lock our keys in the car and it drives us crazy and we're speeding and da-da-da-da-da. We have the same days that we might lock our keys in the car, we're out with some friends, and it's funny.
So
what's the difference? The difference is how we process it in our heads. Humor is not something that's out there. Humor is within us. Humor is our own perspective on what we see. You can bring more humor into life if you look for more humor in your life. Think of that active reticulator. Look for it. Go find it. It's there. And if somebody doesn't think you're funny, look. Don't try to be a comedian, but look for where the tension areas. Look for people who are stressed out. One company I was trying to get in for, I'll leave you with this. I was trying to get in for and teach, actually at Bryant College, where I was an alumni, to teach starting business. And this woman who was doing the schedule, she's like, well, I'm so stressed. Every time I talk to her, she's telling me about the stress of putting together this schedule. This was her frustration. So I thought, okay, how can I create a bond with her by relieving the tension of her frustration? So I found this 10-inch Bear aspirin, this oversized Bear aspirin. I mailed it off to her with a little note. It said, Dear Barbara, I hope this helps you keep your sense of humor as you approach this deadline. 2 weeks later, she sends me a letter back. She said, Darren, we did you one better. She said, now in our office, we have headache of the day. And the aspirin travels from desk to desk to desk. Now think about it. If you're sitting there and you're stressed out and everyone around you knows that this thing just happened to you at work, and you're sitting there frustrated, stressed out, and somebody just walks over and places the aspirin in front of you. How do you feel?
That's
you
great.
Feel included. I believe when we humorize, we humanize.
Mm.
That's why I say it's not about jokes. When we humorize, we humanize.
Nice. I like that.
So
I like that.
Wish I could spend all night with you guys. I hope I've just opened you up to some more ideas. Get that story file. Hey, check out my website, humor411.com. But I don't care if you get something or not. If you do, great. If you don't, that's okay. But look for more humor. Have more fun. Life is short. Laugh sooner.
Mm.
And if I can do it, anyone can do it. Even a funny doctor from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah, from Nigeria stroke Tulsa. Well, Darren, thank you so much. I like that, especially like that last quote. When you humorize, you humanize. That is great. That is great. I think humor is such a key part of our design, our structure as human beings. And when we look around the cultures of the world, people in every culture have humor as part of their, whether their culture, their stories, or their whatever it is that they do. So what you've done in this last hour is really to help open our eyes and our minds to this very, very important aspect of who we are. And basically can't thank you enough. We're going to let you go. And any parting words you want to leave for the floor, I guess?
Well, I just really think that life can be so much more fun if we choose to find the fun.
Mm-hmm.
Think of that RMT, people stressed around you. Relieve my tension.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like you see it on their face, but let that face call to you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be a comedian to be able to relieve someone's tension. A lot of times it's just the acknowledgement. We as human beings, we want to feel like we're not alone. We want to feel connected to someone, that other people know what we're going through. And that helps us to feel so much better. So humor, healing power of humor, anyone can access it. It's in your head, though. And I encourage everyone to find some resource to go and learn more about it. Because if you engulf yourself, you'll continue to see more around you. Study, watch videos, get books, but choose to have humor as a bigger part of your life. And remember, stage time, stage time, stage time.
Practice, practice, practice. Well, folks, we're going to call it a day or a night. Stay tuned. If you're not on our mailing list, go ahead to our website, buildingstrengthwebinars.com. And if you want to order the CD of tonight's call, write to DVDs at buildingstrengthwebinars.com. Sorry, it's a little long, but if we made it any shorter, I don't know, something about BS webinars doesn't sit too well with me. So I don't know about you, Sherry, but I think it doesn't sound too good. So we're going to write it out in full, Building Strength Webinars. Well, folks, you guys have a great night, and we'll talk on the call later. And thank you again, Dr. Darren.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Congratulations on your first webinar.
Oh, thank you.
Hopefully the guests will make it on time next time.
All right. They will. Have a good night.
All right. Take care. Good night.